Welcome to Pep Talks with Jeanne. I'm your host, Jeanne Pepper. I started doing Pep Talks as a way to inspire you to do intentional acts of kindness and to further the goals of #BlazeItForward. Since its inception, Pep Talks has evolved, and now I use it to interview people actively making a difference in this world through their volunteerism, community service, or careers. My guests are all here because they have dedicated their lives to making this world a better place. Join us as we delve into the hopes, dreams, and aspirations of these truly inspiring and hardworking people. This season, we will be using a panel format in some of our episodes to bring together synergistic guests to discuss topics that weave the social fabric of the world around us. Welcome to another episode of Pep Talks with Jeanne. Welcome to Pep Talks with Jeanne. Today I have in my studios my new friend, Jeffery Soloman. Thank you for being here today.
It's a pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we didn't meet in a super conventional way, but I'm sure glad we met. Jeffery reached out to me through our website and said, I think I've got something of interest for you that we should discuss. And that happened to be his work, his lifelong work doing social justice work through theater. And Jeffery started a production company with a creative partner in New York City in the early 2000s that called Houses on the Moon. And the goal of Houses on the Moon was to create content that would educate people, in this case, students primarily, but the public also, I would say, could learn a lot from the work that you're doing. And one of the pieces, or the first piece that I am aware of that you did, was a play called DeNovo. And if anyone is a lawyer out there listening to this, you know that is a legal term for when we hear a case for the first time or new. So that is significant to this story because it is a story about immigration. And it is not a happy story, but it is a very real story. And it is about the real life story of a young man who became a victim of our immigration system, sadly, among other things. But that certainly played a role in his early death. So let's not waste any time. Jeffery, why don't you tell us more about Houses on the Moon and your work?
Sure. So Houses on the Moon is a not-for-profit theater company in New York City with a mission to amplify unheard voices, to tell untold stories, with the purpose of lessening isolation and dispelling ignorance. And we perform everywhere, many, primarily in New York, but also all over the country and once in El Salvador. Yeah, Houses on the Moon has all kinds of wonderful plays that are very deeply researched, maybe 2 years of community partnership, lots of listening, hundreds of interviews, creative partners with different communities. And, for me, Houses started with a play called Building Houses on the Moon, which also gave the name to the company, about LGBTQ youth issues back in the year 2001.
Oh, that's really interesting. I didn't know that.
And then how did we stumble onto immigration stories? I was in the wake, actually, of September 11th, 2001. I realized how little I knew about the outside world, outside of the United States of America. Like, we kind of got smacked by the outside world. And I realized how much I didn't know. And I just started looking globally. And I performed my play MotherSON, which is not a Houses project. That's a coming out story about me and my mom. And I presented that in the Philippines at the International Lesbian and Gay Association World Conference, which was a great, wonderful opportunity. And I learned about political asylum for LGBT refugees in the United States, something I didn't know was possible. And I became fascinated, and it was a story that I wanted to pursue. And so I just started interviewing lawyers and refugees and asylum seekers and asylees and dozens of people in the asylum system, mostly fleeing persecution because of sexual orientation and gender identity persecution. And when I did that, I spent a lot of time in court in immigration court, and I realized how little I knew about what the court, is in a democratic country. It bears our name. It does the work of the American people. And I realized how little I knew about what went on there. I didn't know anything about what went on there until I sat inside.
Why would you?
Yeah. And so my partner and I, a creative partner, Emily, thought, next time the name of that play was Terrace Crossing, which was a fictionalized account based on real things. But we thought, next time, why not do verbatim text? Don't invent anything. Just report or present and word for word exactly what goes on in court. So that was the impetus for the play DeNovo. And at that time, in 2007, the Ninth Circuit Court of Appeals had determined that there were many erroneous judgments being made in court because of the sheer volume, the caseload that the judges are hacking through. There were mistakes, and there were people mistakenly deported. Mm-hmm. And we thought, let's put out a call to lawyers and immigrants and human rights organizations for a case worthy of a second hearing, which is the meaning of DeNovo, a DeNovo review, to hear the case again, right, as if from the very beginning. Mm-hmm. Let's put out a call for a case that should be heard again, if not by the system, then by the public. And we got dozens and dozens of cases and stories. And in the end, we focused on this one story of this young man, Guatemalan teenager.
Edgar Chicoy Guzman.
Edgar Chicoy Guzman, yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Was that the only story that came out of all that work and all of the interviews?
No, there were dozens of stories. It was very.
Did you create stories though from your research other than this one called DeNovo?
No.
Okay.
We initially we were trying to create a play that focused on maybe 3 real cases, mm-hmm, and then it became apparent that Edgar's story needed the space to spread out and just be on its own.
Yeah. Yeah.
And the passion of the people that knew him, his lawyer, his mother, his counselor, from probation camp, really were the passion of the people that knew him really led us to say, okay, this is the one.
Yeah. Let's go back a little bit. You started Houses on the Moon. You created content such as Terrace Crossing, which was about an LGBTQ coming out story. Maybe is that what that was about?
Yeah, or LGBT. Really, it was about a transgender refugee fleeing persecution in Guyana.
So it was an immigration story, and it was about LGBTQ. Okay, yeah. And then you went on. I don't know how many other productions occurred between 2001 and when DeNovo premiered in 2008. But you have essentially used Houses on the Moon as a vehicle for creating this social justice content. It definitely has a social justice component for sure. And then, just there's something I think wonderful and healing about telling untold stories. Yeah, I agree with you 100%.
In terms of just holding up a mirror to stories that aren't often heard or told.
Yeah.
And so that's social justice, but it's also, I would say, empowerment or.
Yeah, I agree with you. It's inspiring. These are inspiring stories. I mean, the story of Edgar is, I don't know. I mean, I guess I would say it's inspiring from the point of view that the fact that it exists inspires us to do better.
It's a really difficult story.
It's a difficult story. Yeah. It's challenging. And and I'm not going to ruin the ending, but it inspired me to care more about people that are different and that are experiencing different hardships in their lives for whatever reason. It's a empathetic moment. So if you have trouble having empathy for other people, this could be your moment. If you listen to this, it's really hard not to feel for the people involved in this story. you have to have a very cold heart to not feel something, to feel some regret that our system is so flawed and so unable to handle the sheer mass of people that are living under circumstances that are our worst nightmares as Americans. We can't even imagine. Although in this story, we're going to get to the trailer in just a second. In this story, the young man was fleeing his country of origin, Guatemala, to escape from gangs and what they were, their hold on him and other people in his age group and in their region. But what he discovered in coming to America is we've got our own gang problem here that is unresolved, is complicated, and very enmeshed in the fabric of our society that we have not figured out what to do about it here either. So this is not necessarily a great place to find asylum if that's the reason why, because you will find yourself right back in what you were trying to get away from. At least that was kind of my takeaway from it. But let's not waste any more time, and let's listen to the trailer of DeNovo, written and produced by Jeffery, Soloman, and Houses on the Moon.
Listen now to a new series from Houses on the Moon Theater Company. On the streets of Guatemala City, gang members were Edgar's only family. But he dreamed of a different future.
Edgar, we're missing a player. You want to join us?
Sale. I like playing soccer. The guys from the gang didn't play soccer. They only stole and did drugs.
To leave the gang was a death sentence.
They want to kill him. What are we gonna do?
Coming to the U.S. was his only hope.
I don't want to go back to Guatemala. If I go back to Guatemala, they're going to kill me.
Your Honor, Edgar is now before you for his final chance to save his life.
DeNovo is a new podcast series from Houses on the Moon Theater Company. Through real-life court transcripts and first-person interviews, DeNovo tells the true story of a case that challenges the conscience of a nation. Listen now and subscribe to Houses on the Moon wherever you get your podcasts.
That trailer really sucked me in, and it made me want to listen to all 3 parts of the DeNovo podcast, which is available for people to listen to on, I know it's available on Apple Podcasts because that's where I listen to it.
Yes, you should search for Houses on the Moon podcast wherever you get your podcasts.
Yeah.
And you can find DeNovo. The play is adapted into 3 half-hour audio episodes. So DeNovo parts 1, 2, and 3.
Yeah. Is the play itself, because this is basically the product of that play, was it also a 90-minute production?
The play runs about 1 hour.
Oh, so it's much less then.
Yeah. The creative challenge of trying to conceive of this stage play for audio was really interesting.
Oh, because you don't have the sets.
There's so many visual cues.
Yeah, you don't have the sets, so you have to create the visuals.
Yeah, and so what we ended up with, which I really love, I think it adds something special, is the hosts are 2 teen immigrants from high school for new immigrants, Pan American High School in Queens, New York.
Oh, okay.
And they really interpret Edgar's story and walk us through it kind of through the lens of their own migration journey.
It's so interesting because I loved their voices. I thought they were really
Yeah, me too.
Really
They really
hopeful, actually. There was a lot of hope in those voices from what I could hear.
Yeah.
Enthusiasm, hope. They seemed very inspired to tell this story. Maybe it's similar to their own stories.
Yeah, they were very inspired, and in a sense, they were experts. I mean, there's been so much noise about immigrants, so much of it untrue, and just to hear them speak very eloquently, simply, powerfully, it's an essential voice that really must be heard.
Yeah.
They're very recent immigrants. I mean, one of the teens, Georgina, had been in the country for 6 years, and Carlos from El Salvador had only been here 4 years.
Yeah.
But they are part of the American project. I mean, they love this country. They love their high school, and I feel really happy they embraced the project.
Yeah, I've always had kind of, I guess, complicated feelings about immigration because on the one hand, this is a country of immigrants. I'm here because we had loose immigration laws when my ancestors in the last century needed a place to go. So we ended up here. And so I naturally tend to want to have everybody here. And I even think that, trying to keep a border is kind of ridiculous because we're just one big place. This world is just one big economy now. So why do we have to make such a big deal? But then I consider like what's happening in Europe right now with immigration and how not all immigrants want to assimilate when they come into a country. And sometimes they, in their inability to assimilate and their separateness, create a lot of dysfunction and unhappiness for the residents. And also they're using resources, I believe, that, that those taxpayers or whatever created. And so, it's like that fairness idea. Is it fair? But, we're not just about fairness and about making sure everybody gets their fair share of the natural resources of this planet. We're also about, kindness and giving people a chance to survive, especially when their lives are being threatened.
Well, I would add that beyond being fair and kind, there's a responsibility.
Yeah.
There's no part of Edgar's life that the U.S. did not play some hand in. So this was kind of a revelation to me. Again, history I didn't know, but it's very well documented that in Guatemala specifically, a democratically elected government was overthrown by the United States in 1953 because of financial interests, mostly having to do with the United Fruit Company. And we sponsored decades of civil war there.
Yeah, so we are part of that backstory that created the situation there now.
Absolutely. And destabilizing the country, hundreds of thousands of deaths, but also hundreds of thousands of refugees fleeing that war came here. And the gangs that we talk about in DeNovo, Mara Salvatrucha and the 18th Street Gang, those are both Los Angeles gangs, not from Central America. Yeah. And so the children of new immigrants got caught up in these gangs here, in part to protect themselves, moving to, segregated neighborhoods overrun with gang violence. And then the United States deported that problem wholesale back to Central America, where local governments were overwhelmed. So there's a vicious cycle. But
oh my God.
It's to pretend that this is a foreign story and that Edgar's story has nothing to do with us is just, it's disingenuous, it's dishonest.
Yeah. I'm really glad you brought that up, that we can't, it's not an isolated problem.
Right. And we have everything to do with his story, including, what do we do with U.S. foreign aid? How do we build, is there some imperative to help build healthier societies south of the border, or do we just withdraw from the world stage, as is the current urge right now with our new administration? Cut foreign aid and cut development and America first, but it really ignores the whole history of America in other countries before this moment, and this requires some complex thinking that
yes,
we're reluctant to do, some deep soul searching and some honest reflection.
On the issue of immigration, it's even a lot more complicated than that, because we're a fairly young country, right? We're a little over 200 years old at this point, 300 years old practically. But if you look at our history, we came here as colonizers. We stole, all of the natural resources of this beautiful country of North America from the indigenous people that lived here. We basically created a genocide to have our way here. We killed any indigenous person that got in our way. And then the ones that managed to survive that genocide ended up in parcels of land contaminated with uranium and, not necessarily in the best places. And like even now, like I just saw a movie not too long ago, something about the dying moon, flowers.
Oh yeah,
do you remember the name of it? We'll put the right name in.
The Scorsese film.
Yeah, the Scorsese film that came out this year, which really showed how, even the indigenous people that managed to end up in places where there were still natural resources like oil or and wealth, that was taken from them because the people that lived here managed to trick them or steal from them and take everything from them. So this is complicated because if you think about it, those indigenous people, well, how are they very much different than the indigenous people on the other side of an invisible line?
Right.
I mean, North America belonged to the indigenous people, all of them, not just the ones on one side of the line. This was their place. And we came here from a different place and took it from them. So, how far do you want to go back? It's like the Jews are screaming about, they have a greater right to, the Middle East, to Israel. Because they were there first. Well, we're not allowing the Native Americans to scream and yell and say, hey, this is our place, get out. So it's very complicated. It's so complicated and challenging that basically we're all just living in a very dysfunctional state of not wanting to acknowledge it and just wanting to forget it and not think about it and let other people deal with it and let other people make those decisions about who gets to come and who doesn't get to come here now, because it makes our heads explode. Or as I like to think of, outrage fatigue. How much there's so many things to be angry about, all of the injustice in this world. Where do we begin? But I'm glad that we have a starting place here with DeNovo, because we now get to DeNovo make a decision for ourselves if this is the society that we want to live in. And that's really what it comes down to, is regardless of what the histories are, regardless of, now the present day is what matters now. And we have to make the decisions now that are life and death decisions for hardworking, good people that just want to survive. They're not asking to come here and commit crime, but we've created a vacuum that sucks people into crime here. And I don't see anything changing in that regard. I don't see a dismantling of the system. I don't know what in creating this play DeNovo and this story and recreating it here. Did any solutions to this problem ever occur to you? Like, were there any? You got to know and understand all of the different players and their motivations and what made them tick, and how would things be different now if you could make the decisions?
Oh boy,
I know that's a lot to unpack.
As a theater artist, it is beyond my pay grade. But I did ask Edgar's lawyer, his pro bono lawyer at the time, Kimberly Baker Medina, the same question. Yeah. And she has deep ties in Central America. And she really spoke to the need to build sustainable, lasting, the problems of poverty and deprivation are huge. And we can't withdraw from that project.
Yeah.
Because it's just ethically and humanely as people, but even in terms of self-interest, we cannot withdraw from the world and trying to build to help build solutions abroad. Locally, when our play is used, we did performances at Elmhurst Hospital in Queens, in perhaps the most diverse district in the nation.
Yeah.
And, a grandmother, elderly woman watched the play, and she saw in the portrayal of Edgar, her grandson really struggling with culture shock of migration and dislocation, and how he was uniquely vulnerable, and was able to connect him with social support resources at the hospital, at Elmhurst Hospital. So if we can be of service that way to tell a difficult, complex story and cause people to ask more questions. And also maybe folks who know nothing about the issue, just to ask questions and learn more about what the system does in our name, learn more about the immigration system. I mean, we really should take ownership of it. It's not just there to, I mean, again, with this America First framing, that is sort of just there to protect U.S. citizens and remove people. I mean, that's what you would be led to believe right now. But it really just, I don't know, it affects us all as a people, as a society. And I love when people learn something new and maybe take ownership for this system acting in our name.
Yeah. I think it's almost too like just a starting point even for us just to start thinking about the disparities that exist in this society. I mean, a lot of people don't really want to think about that because they'd rather just, live in a gated community, pay taxes, and not leave those decisions to, the people that understand the issues better. And maybe I'm guilty of that too, because I'm not getting involved in this any more than anyone else here in Orange County. I don't think, other than, I want to hear the stories and I want to know. I want to hear, and I want to listen and understand the plight of people now.
I mean, I think it's imperative that we push our elected leaders not to dismantle the asylum system. That there's this conception of the U.S. as a place that is about liberty and justice and the lofty words on the Statue of Liberty, that they mean something. And we have international obligations that we can't just say, okay, that's done with.
Yeah.
As a civilized society.
Yeah.
So I would hope that folks would really fight to keep those ideals, those values.
Yeah. I think one really important thing that DeNovo does, and especially since this was a play that really was created to be taken to schools, and particularly in the New York City area, right?
Actually, no.
No?
This was created just as a way to open up the immigration court system and let people look inside, and was created originally for adults.
Oh, it was?
Yeah, but educators stepped up and said, "Oh, we need this. We need our students to see this." So, it started. We started with theatrical performances for adult theater audiences.
What I think is so important about it, though, and particularly for high school students, is, if nothing else, to teach the importance of empathy. Because as I listened to this, I got more and more pulled into caring and about Edgar, and feeling like I was in his shoes. Like, how would I feel if this was me, if this was my son, if this was, if this was a family member that was trying to survive. And it made me very sad. And I think that if nothing else, I believe that we have a responsibility as a society to hear these stories and to feel sadness, that we can't help everybody. Maybe we can't right now, but maybe we could someday but we have to start somewhere. And I don't think we can even start the real process until we feel that caring and empathy as a society. We have to, as a majority, just hear these stories and really start to care and feel something about it. And it's art and theater that make people feel things, maybe uncomfortable feelings, but that is the purpose of this art that you've dedicated your life to creating art. And really good art has the ability to pull at our heartstrings and to give us new ways of thinking about the world, new perspectives. And you've done a fine job of that here, I will say. And I hope that people that listen to my podcast will listen to this. And I'm sure most of the people, this is the problem with this podcast, is you preaching to the choir here, because most people that listen to this podcast already care about these things. But if we can get somebody who has the ability to share this story with people that aren't in the church of PeppTalks, then that would really that could do some magic. That really could. And I'm hoping that that's what happens here. I would love for this to be heard by everybody in Orange County, because I think that this is a place that has probably been the most resistant to immigration of anywhere in California. I wouldn't be surprised if it was right here. So, so let's listen to a little bit more so that our listeners can understand why it's so important for people to listen to this, to know this story. And let's go with our next clip.
Carlos, have you ever been in an immigration center or detention?
When I crossed the border, they send me to a detention center. After they do the papers and all of that, they send you to La Hielera.
What is a hielera?
We, the Latinos, we call the hielera the freezing room where immigration sends you. When after they're done with doing the papers and all of that, they send you to this like very freezing room, and they don't give you nothing to cover yourself, and the only thing that they give you is like this aluminum cover.
And what does that mean in English, the hielera?
The hielera means the ice box. This is a letter that Edgar wrote to his mom from immigration detention, and it's also translated from the Spanish.
December 1st, 2003. I am here in this place in hell, Mama. Where I am in Colorado, it's very cold and sometimes it snows. Here, I send you this picture, and now I'm fat and sorry that I'm doing those signs with my hands. And the shoes fit me a bit big, but I still use them. Thank you for the things. And tell my hellos to El Gordo y El Chino when they ask. And when you talk to my aunt, tell her that I'm behaving so that I can leave from here, so that I can help you and not return here to this prison and do something good. All right, Mom. I'll write another day, and now I'm tired of how they treat me here. Fucking mean.
I remember when I heard that, when I listened to the whole play, and I felt his pain. I really did. I felt the disconnect that immigrants who get caught up in the deportation process, how isolated they are, and how difficult it is for them to get access to just very basic help, very basic counseling, even, or anybody that cares.
Yeah, I mean, Edgar would have been given a number, an alien number. And I think now we're called upon as human beings, as folks are talking about these mass roundups and mass deportations, is that there are people here, there are real people here, there are real families here, and
children.
And children, yeah, especially children. You know, when Edgar died, I don't think it's giving too much away if I tell you how this ends, which is not well, because he's deported back to a place where his life where there's a green light on him, an execution order, and he's deported and murdered 17 days later. But when this happened, there was a great cry from human rights activists. The case was spoken about in the halls of Congress. And a possible fundamental reconsideration of the way we treat minors in custody, and the unique responsibility in terms of sending a minor back to a place that may not be.
He wasn't even 18 years old.
Yeah, he was 16. Yeah. But I feel like much of that reconsideration has been swept away and swept under the rug. And it's really important now that we remember that we're talking about human beings, people who are loved.
Yeah.
I wish I had something better to say, more hopeful to say, but I feel like the humanity of people is easily lost and obscured in the talking points.
Yeah. Well, that's how else do we justify the things that we do? You know, in the name of nationalism, you know, we do them, and we are far from where these things take place, so it's easy to remove ourselves from the pain and the struggle of other people who have to deal with, you know, the laws as they change.
If I could say something else about the clip. So you heard the two real teen hosts there. And Carlos in particular, you know, had been locked up in one of the centers at the border. Typically the holding places are kept way too cold, which if asked, the immigrants have been told, well, it's because of, you know, for health reasons, and germs and viruses and stuff, but it makes it really a brutal experience. And you've probably seen the pictures of migrants wrapped up in these kind of like foil blankets, particularly around the family separation activity that was going on during the first Trump administration. So that's what he's talking about, being there in detention and holding and being very cold and having nothing but a blanket. And Edgar, in his letter, his real letter, because his mom handed us a box of all his letters to go photocopy when we interviewed her, spoke of the same thing, that it's cold. It's very cold.
Yeah. Now, just to put it out there, him coming to the U.S. because we don't have a good handle on our own gang problem here did not make things better for him when he came here initially. Is that right?
So Edgar's story is a complex story. I guess it's one of the reasons that we chose it. I mean, we'd like to have sort of the ideal immigrant, but that's, Edgar's story is difficult. His mom left when he was a baby. He was raised by a grandfather who was mostly not there, mostly at church, and an uncle who sold drugs, and got from the earliest ages wrapped up in gang life. And when he tries to leave gang life, they put a hit out on him, an execution order, a green light, and he flees for his life. So I don't think his options were very great about like, oh, where do I go? His mom figured out a way to get $7,000 together for a coyote to smuggle him out of the country, and he ran for his life. And he comes to a neighborhood that is overrun with gangs, just outside of the Rampart neighborhood, just outside of MacArthur Park. And his gang counselor speaks about that. Like, just to be able to leave the door, he had to sneak out the back of his mom's apartment to avoid contact with other gangs. And, eventually he did. He got wrapped up in another gang in Los Angeles. But
wasn't that somewhat predictable?
Well,
so I know it's not a perfect story.
But
I mean, I guess the only point I'm trying to make is that your detractors, or the detractors from the empathetic side of this, would say, well, if he hadn't come here, then he wouldn't have committed a crime. He wouldn't have become involved with gangs, and he wouldn't have ended up in this situation. So how did that help that he came to our country? He used our resources. He committed crimes against our people. And now we're the bad guys for sending him back to where he started from, where he should have, in the beginning, chosen not to come here if he didn't have a plan in place.
Well, I think coming here for people running for their lives is, we're not going to stop that. Or who knows? Maybe the new administration thinks they can stop people running for their lives. But I think that's anyone who's facing life or death is going to try and seek another place.
You would think.
A different place to survive.
And can we blame them? I mean, we can't blame somebody for wanting to survive.
But he did, what sunk his asylum case is he did get involved in a different gang here. And it's what the judge spoke about, which was predictable. The needs of a kid coming in like Edgar are profound, and it was, he came into kind of a rigged system where, for camaraderie and friendship and survival, he, where did he go to the life he had always known? So it's not an easy story. It's not a simple story. The question is, do we think, and I had to look at the evidence of all the evidence we collected for the play, is change possible? Do we see a young man who was only 16, was unformed? Do we see a young man who began to grow up and see like, oh my God, I want to survive. I want something different.
Yeah.
I see that. Maybe people will come and see the play or listen to the podcast and say, well, I don't see that at all. But in examining what he said in court and Edgar's letters to his mother, I see someone growing up and on the brink of change, and that change was just not possible with the life.
Right. And I think that, I know that you're just trying to shine a light on a particular, very, very sad case. You're not here to make a point that, we always make the wrong decisions, or we don't have the proper, systems in place to prevent these types of things from happening. You're just showing us that the way that the current immigration system works, that these are the types of things that happen. And as a society, are we okay with that? It's not really an argument for or against, in my opinion, for or against allowing asylum in the United States. I think it's more of shining a light on a situation that we need something. We can't just allow people to die in countries where they're being threatened.
We need something, and it's also a problem that we need to own part of.
Right. And and you bring that up as well, that, we created the political problems in these countries.
We can't just walk away and say this has nothing to do with us.
Right.
I mean, that's easy to do, I suppose.
Yeah.
But I don't think we can do it. That Edgar's story is our story.
Right. It is. It's we have an immigrant story here in this country. We're all, anybody that is against immigration is kind of a hypocrite, unless you are a Native American and you're against immigration. I don't want to hear it, but no. I think that I appreciate that that artists have to make a lot of choices because you want to do work that's meaningful. You want to create art that expresses yourself and that also has an opportunity to perhaps to be a game changer or to perhaps start a discussion. And that's exactly what you've done here. And it's brilliant in that sense that it creates, it's a very easy to listen to. It's compelling. It pulls you in. I immediately felt like I wanted to be this kid's mom and adopt him. But, that's from my life experience. I want to save every kid that's, being bullied and harassed and harmed. Yes, I would love to be able to help every one of these kids. But, there's no solution to this problem right now that I can see anyway. But I am inspired that we need to keep talking about it, and we need everybody to hear these stories so that they have a reference point, and especially young people, because they're going to be the ones making the decisions in the future. So I love that. So if anybody's listening to this that has kids, let them listen to this and have a discussion with them. And you're on the way home from school, play it in the car. And I know my kids would be like, what is this crap? Turn this off. What is this? Stop it. And I'd be like, oh, it's just an interesting little thing I'm listening to. And they'd say, turn it off or we're getting out of the car or pull the car over. But yeah, we would listen to things like this and talk about it or just talk about situations. But it's not easy. It really isn't, because everybody has their pet thing that they do want to talk about, like the LGBTQ issues that we have. I mean, there's a lot to unpack, Jeffrey, because you could be doing social justice on so many fronts. It
just so happens that a good part of the work our theater company has done are prior to now have been very much in the area of immigrant stories, immigrant rights, and also LGBT, and particularly around transgender folks and identity, and both of those are squarely in the sights of the current administration.
Yeah. But, that's also a product of, it's not just an administration, because an administration is a lot of people. So this is something that matters to Americans right now. And they have very deep feelings about it on both sides for whatever the reasons are. So the only thing that really can get through to people on both sides are real stories and how real people are impacted. So either way, whether or not we make it harder or easier for people to come into this country, we need to be informed, and we need to know what the immigrant experience is like so that we can make an informed decision on that for ourselves. And when we don't hear these stories, that's really hard to do, because, just like I said earlier, you can sit on the hill in your gated community and not think about these issues, and that's your choice, but it's still happening around you. And you can choose not to be involved. Yeah, that's what you can choose to do. And maybe you have your reasons. Like, I never got involved in the LGBTQ issues. I never got involved in PFLAG. I never did any of those things because I didn't want to out my son. He did not want me to do that. So, we all have our reasons for why we do or don't get involved. And it's complex. It's very complex. So nobody's judging anybody here, because there are a lot of reasons why, but there's no reason to not educate yourself. There's no reason not to understand the human experience, and not just your own, but of other people from other places. So that's my 2 cents on it. And also, it's very entertaining because it's real. And hey, truth is stranger than fiction. Mm-hmm. My life is proof of that, really. So yeah, so this is how you can just do a little something to just improve your own ability to understand these issues. That's all. That's all you need to do. Just give yourself an opportunity to give yourself one more little piece of the puzzle of what is going on around you in this reality. And it takes 90 minutes to listen to 3 parts of DeNovo. And I guarantee you the first 30 minutes of it will suck you in. Because after I listened to it, I couldn't find the other 2 right away. And I was like, I got to get hold of Jeffery. I need to know what happened here. So yeah, but you won't have any problem finding it, because we're going to have the links posted right here online where you are listening to this podcast right now. So you'll have no problem finding it. Do we want to listen to another clip? What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Let's do that.
Edgar is now before you for his final chance to save his life. He's asking you not to send him back to a country where he's been identified as one who must be killed. He's asking you not to send him back into the arms of his persecutors. He's asking you for one final chance to escape the gangs and become a child who is safe from fear and danger, a child who is free to attend school, to pursue a career, to live in a home, to have a family. He's asking for the opportunity to become a productive adult. He's asking that you not deny him his ultimate chance.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm excited about this clip because as an attorney listening to her give this final argument, I'm thinking to myself, she's nailed it. This is exactly right. He deserves the right to be a normal person, to be a good person. He deserves the opportunity to live a good life, not a life of crime or a life living in fear or a life of deprivation. He has a chance here. He's a good person. But what I felt like was missing from this, and I don't think it would have changed anything, is a plea to the judge that he deserved as a basic human right the opportunity to live and make a good life for himself and to benefit the American people, America, because this country is built on people like Edgar who are fleeing from persecution. And they are what make this country great, is that we have these people that are so grateful to be here, that they want to do good here. And I think that he was never given a chance to do good here because he got sucked into this terrible gang and fear and all of this that was on him so quickly that he didn't have any way to really strategize or figure out a way out of it before it was too late. So, and I don't think it would have changed anything, but I think that immigration is a really complicated thing, and part of immigration is making sure that the people that come into this country will benefit this country. I know that's part of the immigration process for legal immigration is you're not supposed to displace workers that are already here, and you're supposed to bring something to this country, your knowledge, your expertise, or whatever it is that will make this country better. But in this case, this is a child with a chance to bring his goodness to this world. And he clearly was a good kid. I really do believe that. Even though he got hooked up with bad people, it happens. Happened to him. So that's my 2 cents.
Well, if you listened to the podcast, you'll hear the judge's decision.
Yeah.
And what the judge says is, your testimony was entirely credible, but you've not shown a reasonable possibility of persecution. I don't believe you would be killed if you were to be sent back to Guatemala. There's many places that you could go somewhere else in the country and not be identified as a former gang member.
Yeah, that's exactly right.
Be murdered.
That's what the judge said. I heard him say that, and I thought to myself, this is ridiculous.
Yeah, I mean,
that doesn't track with what.
Well, right, with what a 16-year-old is.
Yeah.
The means of a 16-year-old.
What is he supposed to do?
Yeah. But the judge basically said, even though you are credible, in the exercise of my own discretion, I'm not going to grant asylum.
Yeah, I'm going to.
So the judges have an enormous amount of leeway, and it's a lottery, it's a crapshoot. You've got to get before,
maybe that needs to change then.
You've got to get before the right judge.
I think that the guidelines for allowing people to stay need to be maybe they need to be looked at.
Edgar could have appealed his case.
He could have,
but he
didn't want to stay in detention.
He was to remain locked up for an indefinite period of time, which was, from a mental health perspective, ultimately not tenable for a 16-year-old. No. And so he just said, okay, I'll go back and they'll deport me. I just need to get out of these four walls. I mean, I think that's part of what we're seeing now is to make migration so difficult that people are like, okay, just forget it. I mean, and even some folks are self-deporting already. Like, this is going to be so difficult, I'm just going to go.
But you know who's going to get hurt by that the most are Americans. Because those people, they weren't just living here as criminals. They had jobs and they worked and they did a lot of the work Americans feel like they're too good to do. So that makes me really sad because now everything's going to be more expensive. I don't know, but it's going to change things. It will change things.
I guess, I hope people take away from listening to DeNovo just the imperative to remember we're human beings and that the systems that we build must reflect our humanity.
Yes. Yes, absolutely.
And particularly as a democracy, they're an extension of us as a people. So the court, the detention center, all these structures, they belong to us as citizens.
Yeah, I'm so freezing cold right now. I'm wondering if I'm experiencing the detention center right now. You feeling it? It's like, it's the perfect temperature for us to talk about how cold it was in a detention center because I'm feeling it. This has been a really, really interesting podcast for me as a host, and I'm really thrilled that you made contact with me. And anybody listening to this, if you have something of general interest to the public and you're doing something really great, even if it's something that's, you might think, oh, well, it's a political issue. She's not going to want to hear about that. Or, you know what? I don't make judgments about politics. This is a nonpartisan issue here. This is about human life and survival. This has nothing to do with your politics. It has everything to do with empathy. And then just think about it that way, that this is an opportunity for you to feel something for another person's and to be a human, to exercise your ability to be a human and to give other people human dignity. And that's pretty much my take on it. And thank you so much for doing this, for dedicating your life to bringing empathy to our society. It's such a good thing. And I'm very grateful people are doing this, especially artists, because artists have the real ability to touch us.
Well, I'm grateful for the opportunity to spread the word. We'd love people to give a listen.
Yeah, they will. I'm hoping we get some. And for the first 10 people that make contact with me and let me know that they listen to the DeNovo podcast, you will get a free t-shirt. So make contact with me after you've listened to it. The first 10.
Am I ineligible?
No, you aren't, because you listened to it and you're asking for it first. So you're going to get a free t-shirt today, Jeffery Soloman. Yay for you. So yes, if you listen to it and you're one of the first 10, make contact and let me know. And because I think this is so important. And if you listen to it with your kids, you can get one for each of your children too. So let me know. Thank you for being on my show today, Jeffery. And I applaud you and your desire to make this world a better place. Thank you.
I love being here. Thank you for having me.
I hope you're back again with the next production after DeNovo. And if you'd like to say a few words about Houses on the Moon production company and your work, please feel free to address the audience.
Hi, folks. Thanks for spending some time with us today. I'm Jeff from Houses on the Moon Theater Company, urging you, please, to go to Houses on the Moon podcast. You'll find Houses on the Moon on any of your major podcast platforms. And in particular, listen to episodes 1, 2, and 3 of DeNovo, which is what we've been talking about today. And then if you're inspired, go and listen to all of their first season. It's a bunch of amazing, true stories told in a theatrical way, with various communities, folks who have transgender loved ones, those who have been impacted by guns and gun violence, and some queer stories from all over the globe.
Wow. Fascinating. Well, I'm going to go back and listen. Sounds like good material. Fabulous. Thank you so much again. And that's it for today on PeppTalks. #BlazeItForward is a campaign my family started in 2018 after our son Blaze was murdered. #BlazeItForward provides the inspiration to thousands of people to repair the world with intentional acts of kindness. If you would like to learn more about Blaze and how you can make a difference, check out www.blazebernstein.org or join our Facebook group at #BlazeItForward. You can also check out my website for this podcast at www.pepptalkswithjeanne.com. There you can follow along with my podcasting adventures and learn more about my fascinating guests and their passion projects. I would like to thank all of the volunteers who help make my philanthropic endeavors a reality. Today, that includes my producer, Eli Moskowitz, all of the volunteer crew members who join us, and a special thank you to my son, Jay Bernstein, for the original theme song you hear at the beginning and ending of each show. This has been another episode of Pep Talks with Jeanne. Until next time, keep on making this world a better place.